And it's time for Lefties Losing It. Here's Sweden's worst export global warming doom goblin, Greta Thunberg, causing more trouble in Italy. She's already got herself banned from Venice for dyeing the main canal green to protest the weather. Now she's pivoted back to her side hustle, Palestine. Let's look at her dancing with UN tax strain Francesca Albanese. Don't know about you, but talk about genocide doesn't normally have me dancing in the streets.
Genocide in Palestine is still ongoing. I repeat, the genocide in Palestine is still ongoing.
What a pack of weirdos. Now, we already have the seditious six, the Democrats who told members of the military to disobey so-called illegal orders, though they couldn't name any. Now we can say that we have a seditious 10 because the View co-hosts have jumped on board the treason train. Here they are suggesting orders given to members of the military may be illegal, and they're calling on US servicemen and women to perhaps break the chain of command.
Okay, enough is enough.
Well, I know this is why those Democratic vets put out that video last week that people said, why would they need to say what's already obvious, that, you know, military personnel, they don't need to, they can refuse to act on an illegal order. And people were like, yeah, but there's nothing like that. Well, this is a situation where there were clearly in the cameras two men on like parts of the explosion, and then they're killed. So the likelihood of this is, it's not a war. We're not at war with Venezuela, but it's murder. It's flat out murder. And anyone that acted on those orders could be held on war crimes. Am I?
Yeah. War crimes for killing narcotics traffickers, bringing drugs into America that will kill thousands? Really? Now, watch as Anna Navarro claims that the Trump administration isn't targeting these narco boats because of its war on deadly drugs. What's her theory?
Donald Trump is trying to convince Americans that this is about fighting drugs, and this is because Maduro released crazy people, opened up the jails and the insane asylums and sent people here. That second part is flat out lies. There is no evidence of that. On the drug aspect, very little of the drugs that go through Venezuela actually come to the United States.
Yeah, great analysis there, Anna. And for the last time, your opinions and weird fever dreams are not facts. Time to check in on trans activist Lily Tino, defending his behaviour in a women's bathroom where he took photos of women in what should have been a private, female-only area.
Took those photos with a very clear goal in mind, which was to show a non-passing trans woman existing peacefully in a bathroom. How do you change people's minds? That's why I posted the pictures, right? Like, yes, I knew it was going to be shocking. Like, I knew. I wasn't just trying to make people mad. I was trying to expose them to something that over time I want to be normal. I don't want to have to walk into a bathroom and feel afraid.
He knew precisely what he was doing, and he got the attention he so desperately craves. Now, we know Christmas is fast approaching and the White House is looking glorious. This year, First Lady Melania Trump oversaw the Christmas decorations. See if you can detect the subtle difference between Melania and Jill Biden's work. First, let's have a gander at what Christmas or the holiday season was like at the White House under the Biden administration. Remember this? I think we've had enough of that weirdness. We've had our quota for weird today. Let's have a look at this year's White House Christmas decorations under the guidance of Melania Trump. just a subtle difference, barely noticeable. Now it's time for a stroll down memory lane and watch here as Margaret Brennan from CBS claimed that Afghan asylum seekers were all properly vetted, even as JD Vance gives her examples and tries to explain to her why prioritising the safety of Americans should be the top priority. I have to say that interview made Margaret Brennan look pretty terrible at the time. After what happened in DC last week, it makes her look even worse.
You said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals have been properly vetted.
But there are 30,000 people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary concern as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people are vetted. These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country.
The inept governor of Minnesota, the man Kamala Harris selected to be her running mate in her failed presidential campaign, is under renewed pressure due to the extraordinary amount of fraud and criminality in his state. Even NBC was asking Tim Walz the tough questions.
Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money from government programs during COVID. As you know, Governor, that is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. So I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems.
Say what now? Did he just say I take responsibility for putting these people in jail? He did no such thing. It was federal prosecutions that put them in jail. But watch as that lie takes hold in the media. And of course, it's repeated by the reliably daft ladies of The View.
Tim Walz said, I put these people in jail. Yeah. Wasn't like we sat around and didn't do anything. And the horrific part is, why is he painting all Somali Americans with this paintbrush?
Far from putting them in jail or even properly investigating fraudulent behaviour, this is what Tim Walz did, according to hundreds of state workers at the Minnesota Department of Human Services, who released a statement that began with this: Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud, but no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Let's bring in Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, what has been happening in Minnesota and what is Tim Walz's culpability here?
Fraud galore. There's fraud everywhere, but Minnesota has just become the poster child for it. As you cited over there, about $1 billion in taxpayer money has been defrauded. That's more than their annual revenue that they take in tax revenue. A lot of it is from the slush money that was going around because of COVID funding. There's lots of fraud that happened around that, Medicaid, housing, all of those things. The one that's getting extra heat is this organization that is a Somali organization. So while fraud is bad when it's of any stripe, it just adds extra salt on the wound when it's happening from a foreign associated entity or recent immigrants that are perpetuating that fraud. That just cuts deeper, which is why that's part of the story, on top of the other fraud. And his culpability, I mean, look, he's kind of got this Elmer Fudd persona, and everybody laughs at him, and he doesn't come across as strong at all. Certainly that's part of it, because it's leadership. I will say in his defense, the root cause of all of this is structural. When you have a giant welfare state in the country, and then you pour into that this spigot of immigration and people who don't really care about the common good and they're sort of here for a cash grab, you're going to wind up in these situations. But he is a poster child as somebody who's a weak leader, and $1 billion of fraud is a very, very bad story, and it's getting bad to worse.
And you add to that mix all that COVID money that was just dispersed very loosely.
Like candy, yeah.
And the hundreds of millions that have been defrauded here, $1 billion is just astonishing.